Today's episode of Midlife Reimagined, a Life Beyond Menopause podcast is with the delightful Sandra Flora. Sandra shares her story about the challenges she went through in perimenopause and how it actually helped her get really clear on what she wanted to do and how she went about doing it. She didn't tell a soul until her website was up. I invite you to maybe make yourself a cup of tea, because Sandra's the type of person you want to sit down with and have a cup of tea as she shares these wonderful stories. And I hope you enjoy this delightful podcast with Sandra Flora. Today I'm thrilled to introduce to you the wonderful Sandra Flora. And again, we've got other accents. Sandra originates from Ireland, and she's been living here in Canada for 34 years. She's a mum and a grandma, but she's also, in her spare time, an interior decorator, and she runs Sandra Flora Home Design and works with people of all ages and stages of life. Some are starting out, some are raising families, and others are downsizing and entering into a new chapter. But as Sandra says, they all have one thing in common, and is that they want a home that feels comfortable, personal, and supportive of how they actually are and how they actually live. And I love that. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here today.
I follow you on Instagram and see these beautiful spaces that, you know, look kind of okay when you start, and you just add this like an accent or a color, and it just totally transforms the room. You just have this eye, from what I can tell, for being able to see the possibilities.
Thank you very much. Yeah, sometimes all it takes is just to come in and change a few things around, and it doesn't cost people, we'll say, an arm and a leg to reform their space. But yeah, no, I love doing what I'm doing. I absolutely enjoy it. Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
So I was originally doing hair for 29 years. That's how I started out my journey. I was a hairdresser, but part-time on the side when I was raising my kids. I used to stage homes for realtors. Yeah, but it wasn't something, it was just kind of, one day a friend of mine who is a realtor said to me, I just love how you pull your space together and do this and do that. Have you ever thought about? I was like, not really, but sure. And I went along on a few of our homes, and I would go in and tweak a few things here and there. And then one thing led to another, and I started, working for other realtors. But like I said, just part-time. So then I kind of just forgot about that, continued with the hair. And when the pandemic hit us, the hair salon I was working in part-time closed. Mm-hmm. So I thought, you know what? And I'm trying to think how old I was, 48, around that. Yeah, 48. And I was going through, like, we'll say, what the doctor said, oh, we think it's perimenopause. And I thought I was going crazy. I was kind of fed up dealing with people like sitting in my chair one-on-one. And there was days where I felt like I would just love to just buzz all the hair. Like, I can't, well, okay. Yeah. So I thought, Sandra, I think it's time for you to take a different approach to maybe a new career, or maybe decide to just relax, or, enjoy your grandchildren. So anyway, I decided, no, that's not me. I've always been the type of person, I need to be doing something. I need to go. And I decided to start my interior decorating business in just when the pandemic hit. The hair salon closes. I spoke to my sister-in-law who does, websites and marketing. And I said, this is my idea. I don't want to tell the family, because there was times in my life where I was, going to do this and do that and just never follow through with it, of exhaustion and like all kinds of things going on, right? So I thought, no, this is one time I'm going to do it. I had the confidence. Yeah. So I launched Sandra Flora Home Design, took my husband out for a Charlie Doan store from White Rock. And I said, hey, we're going to have a glass of wine. That was the time when they were letting 3 and 4 in a restaurant with the masks. And I said, Google my name. And there I was, website and all. And that's when Sandra Flora Home Design started. And I took the bull by the horns and ran. And I'm still going. It's been 5 years. So that's kind of how it all came about. But I did have some courses on design, decorating, staging throughout my life, right? Yeah, so here I am. And you sweating, hot flashing.
We'll get on your menopause journey in a minute, right? It's one of those things where the hot flash just comes, right? Can't do anything about it. Yeah. So had you told him that you were going to do this?
No.
Oh, it was a total surprise.
No, because like prior, like I said, I'm going to, I want to maybe do this business or do that. I'm fed up of hair, and my kids weren't requiring so much of my time, they're becoming teenagers. So I found myself having a little bit more time, I would say, idle time. I thought, I would always think of, what else can I do besides this and that? And I would share this, and then it would fall to the wayside, and I'd never, right? So I thought, no, this is one time. I'm going to keep this to myself, first of all, to see if I'm going to follow through. And second of all, I really want to show that I'm not just a talker, I'm also a doer, and I'm going to accomplish what I set out to do here. And I felt like I was way more confident in myself. I'm assuming maybe my age or all kinds of stuff, right? So that was when he seen, and he was sitting at the restaurant, and he looked, and he just kind of looked up at me, and he said, my God, he said, this is actually bringing a tear to my eye. And I'm like, don't get weepy on me. But he said, this is amazing. And he continues to be my biggest supporter, always in my corner. Yeah, he's been amazing. My children, my daughter-in-laws, my grandchildren, my family, like just great support system. So that helps too.
That's really important though.
And they sometimes
And I love the way you kind of kept it to yourself, because you had created almost a habit of saying you're going to do something. So this time it was like, this is really important to me. So I'm just going to, and then to show him at the restaurant. What a great story. I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah. So he was surprised and shocked.
It's interesting though. I hear from so many women now, the pandemic was really a turning point for many people. I mean, as awful as it was, well, I know for us, that was the reason we chose to come to Canada, was that, we were never going to be separated from our children again. I mean, I think I've heard this from a lot of people, and I think that kind of pandemic time was like, okay, is this what I really want to be doing for the rest of my life? Like, how can I make a difference? And I love your story about standing with the people in your chair. Isn't it typical? I mean, that's what perimenopause is all about. It's like, do I have to put up with this for the rest of my life?
And I didn't know what was happening to me, to be honest with you, Sally, because every doctor that I went to from, I'm going to say the age of 38 to I'm going to say 48 when the pandemic hit. You just have anxiety, or like, no, you're not, your hormones, you're normal. And so you tend to feel like, well, if I'm normal, why am I feeling like this? And then anxiety, I'm like, have I got, because I'd be so tired sometimes of thinking, Jesus, have I got cancer? Or, all kinds of things. Like, it was just, so I think I spent 10 years living inside my brain, verbalized it a little bit. But then you're like, okay, people don't want to hear this. So just move on. I don't have hot flashes. I still have regular periods. So maybe they're right. Maybe it's me. There's something wrong with me. And I guess I'll never find out.
Right. And because up till now, the medical profession has really not had the research or the money to research women going through perimenopause, and especially at your age, which is slightly early than normal, whatever normal is, they wouldn't have even looked at it. And I know I have a similar story. I thought I was going crazy. I thought I'm either dying of some dreadful disease or I'm in early onset dementia, because the rain fog was just terrible. I couldn't remember what I was doing from one minute to the next. I think there's, your story about that is probably a very common one even now. that we don't understand what actually happens.
Yeah.
So when was the moment you kind of figured out this could be perimenopause or menopause? When was that moment for you?
So I spent a lot of time, I went to some nature, and then I spent a lot of time in and out of health food stores, trying all kinds of different herbs, talking to the people in the health food stores, and they said to me, you're not too young to be going through perimenopause. They said, like, I'm going to say I was like maybe 44.
Yeah.
And I said, but doesn't that mean you don't have a period anymore? Because I spoke to my mom, and my mom said, oh, I was 52 and once your period stopped. But there was never talk about menopause. You know what I mean? Like that just wasn't, it was like, okay, your period stops and now you're on a different trajectory of life. But like to be tired, to sometimes be so angry, to be snappy, to be bloated, weight, like just nothing sat right. And to feel like, where's that happy person where's Sandra? You know, is she gone? Or is it stress? Or like, it was like a health food store one day when this actually guy in the health food store was so helpful about talking to me. And he said to me, I don't want to be rude, he said, but this is called, like, it's the change of life, perimenopause. And he said, and then we have postmenopause. And like, he explained the stages to me. And he said, it's not one size fits all. And just because your doctor said your blood hormones are showing like within normal range doesn't mean that they were always normal range, because maybe they were different 5 years ago. None of that, right? So that was kind of the moment I went, oh, this must be what's going on. Menopause, really? or perimenopause.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then anxiety, that controlled a lot. That took over a lot.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting because when we know what we're dealing with, it takes away that, oh, I'm not going nuts. I'm not going like this. This is normal, for want of a better word. And I was a little bit the same as you. I actually don't know when menopause happened because I went through just real challenges with perimenopause and ended up with a Mirena IUD. So the period stopped. I just don't know when I went, like I can't, because menopause is 12 months to the day of your last period, but I have no idea when that happened. I just know that suddenly I started to feel, I could see myself coming out of the fog. I could see myself coming out, I started to be able to put some things into practice that hadn't been there before, because as you're talking about, I mean, you had to go to numerous places to listen, to find, and so many women do that. I know you've said in the notes you sent to me, you'll talk about this now, because nobody ever has, really.
No, nobody ever did. I don't know if maybe years ago it was like, I remember like growing up in Ireland, and I was just young. I left when I was 14, but I remember like you'd hear a lot of like women, oh, her grandmother, and that grandmother would have been 50, let's say, right? Because we were young kids. She's in like a place called like RD. Well, RD would be like a mental institution, like we had Riverview here. Or a lot of women were going to these places, and you would hear, oh, she had to have electric shock therapy. And I remember as a young girl feeling like, oh my God, oh, that woman's like, we'd be told, oh, they're crazy. Like, but that wasn't what it was all about. Now that I look back and kind of think, those poor women were in the change of life, standing at the front door, red, soaked in sweat. Like when I think about it now, I think back then some women that couldn't cope, like some women cope better than others, right? So the ones obviously that were having such a hard time, they just sent them off to medicate them, electric shock them. And I think, right, that's how it went.
It used to be called hysteria.
So therefore, a lot of people didn't talk. There you go. See? So like looking back at that, and then so no one spoke about the change of life, or, because it was like, you don't want to say anything as a woman because you don't want anyone to think you're crazy or something. There's what could be wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with you. Like, you know what I mean? So for me, like kind of looking back on that, I feel sad for those people that couldn't get the help and didn't have the knowledge. And today we have come a long way, that's for sure. And like to talk about it, to
Yeah.
open up about it, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being brushed under the rug. And doctors would, in my 40s, keep saying to me, you need to go on, I can't remember, Paxil, antidepressants. They kept telling me this will help your anxiety. But thank God, the type of person I was, unless I was absolutely dying, I wouldn't take a Tylenol or an Advil. Like, that's just how I was. So he'd give me the pill and I'd come home and I'd get researching and I'm like, oh, this is not what's wrong with me, right? Like, but like you did say, Sally, so when my period stopped, I was 52. It was May. And so after the year and a half, I'm going to say, is when I wondered all that stuff that I went through and how I felt was no longer there. Or I was mentally coping and dealing with it. And I went to myself, oh my God, it must have been hormone fluctuations. So I'm so glad I didn't take these things that were prescribed. I'm so glad I didn't do this or do that. It was just the natural process of the body. And then what started 2 years after the period stopped now, and it's full blowing, would be hot flashes, soaked, but I would take that any day over dealing and feeling and living the way I did in perimenopause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think you've got a really interesting point there too, but I think for many women going through this, it's actually perimenopause that's harder because, as you said, I mean, interesting, highest number of divorces amongst women are about the age of 47. Highest rates of suicide amongst women are about the age of 47, which is just slap bang in the middle of this thing you're going through. And it's interesting you talk about, the going into mental institutions. I mean, we're talking 50 years ago. That's not a long time ago. It was the era of our mothers and our grandmothers. And my grandmother was on antidepressants as long as I can remember. And I remember my mum telling me the story of going to a doctor's, and she wanted to go on antidepressants because all her friends were. She thought, well, maybe that's the key. And he said to her, just go home and pour yourself a sherry. And so she did. And so that's how she got through it. And and it's unfortunate because I was pregnant with my second child when I remember all this happening, and then she passed when she was 57. So I didn't have
That's so young.
Yeah, so yeah. She passed from breast cancer, but I didn't have the wherewithal to ask her. I just remember things. Like I remember coming home from work one day and she was sitting outside crying, and I thought, the hell's wrong with mum now? And never for the life of me thinking, oh my God, her hormone, and 5 kids at home, and she was working full time. I mean, when I look back on it now, I think, oh my God, poor mum. She just was, always on a diet, always trying to lose weight, all that stuff. I think it's really important that the conversations we have with our daughters in particular is about this. We have a hesitancy to, as women, I think, as it gets further away from it, we said, well, it's fine. I was fine. I got through it, blah, blah, without realizing, remembering, as you said, what it was like when you were in it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Do you talk to your daughters about this?
I have 2 sons.
Oh.
But I definitely talk to my daughter-in-laws for sure, but they're young. So I do have one daughter-in-law married to my oldest son. She's only going to be 30, but she's been experiencing nothing but issues. We had this conversation and I said, that's not normal. I said, I think you could have hormonal imbalances. Don't be letting the doctors tell you this, tell you that. Why don't you, and I'd tell her things or show her, like, read this book or read up a little bit more on yourself. Because I said, I spent a lot of young years, I said, and you're going to waste them. Don't waste them. I feel like I wasted mine if I could just get them back, right? And then going back to moms, there was 6 of us too in my family. So my mom had 6 kids, worked as well. And I think their generation before, like my grandmother, my great grandmother, they raised the women to be like, no, you're a strong woman. There's nothing, like, there's nothing wrong. You just open the door, let the air come through, yourself off, and just move on, right? So I think that was how those women were raised, and they didn't know enough. Like, oh, so for example, my mom, she went through like the hot flashes were so horrendous for her. She's a 5 now, and she still gets hot flashes. But like in her 50s, like my dad passed away in my mom's very early 50s. So she was working full time, and she said, I remember, she said, like when she'd have to fit a guy for a suit and she said, here I am measuring and I'm just red and the sweat's running out of me. And she said, and I'd be thinking, what must those people be thinking? Like, why am I all red or things like that? She said, like, if you really need to take something, don't suffer, she tells me. Don't suffer. Yeah.
100%. And each woman's, like, as you said before, each woman's journey is different. There's no two women that have the same. And, when you see on social media in particular, just do this, or just do that, or just try this, it's so individual. And I'm a great proponent for girls from an early age. Understand where your hormones are at, so you can measure it. Get your hormones done now, then you better measure it in 12 months and measure it in 12 months and measure it in 12 months, and then And I think we put up with so much as women, even things like painful periods and not being able to get out of bed. And my naturopathic doctor says we don't have to do that. And yet it's almost like it was accepted. Oh, well, you just have a bad period, but
just move on with it. Like, that's another thing too. In my younger years, I struggled with heavy periods, anemia. I was on and off with gynecologists. I had a ablation done. Nothing worked for me. Nothing worked. So they did recommend a hysterectomy in my mid-40s. And I was a little nervous. And then when the gynecologist, I don't know what it was, she had to do some type of ultrasound. And she said, this hysterectomy won't be laparoscopic. We will have to go in through one of your cesarean section incisions, because it's a little more complex, because your uterus is adhered to the, what did they call it? She said to me, layers of muscle from, I guess, the cesarean sections, however, scar tissue. See, my brain. Scar tissue.
We get it.
So she said it would be a little bit more, it'd be a little bit more in depth. Oh, and right there I went, not a chance will I be opened up from one of my cesarean section incisions, because I remember it was a bit of a tougher recovery, and there was no way at 48. And I thought, you know what? I suffered this long. What's a few more years? And that's just mentally where I went. I thought, I suffered this long. What's a few more years? I should be. My mom was 52. My granny was 52. So please, God, fingers crossed, I'll stop at 52. And they did. And my iron levels, I remember ferritin levels were always 3, 5, 7. Now they're 75.
Wow. That's
so
amazing
it's
to
like,
even function.
Yeah, and I was like a wet, honestly, like a wet dish rag.
Incredible.
I just felt like, a wet dish rag that you wring out. That's how I would explain it to my husband. I'd say, see that dish rag, and you go to wring it out and it just flops. I said, that's how I feel every day. And he'd say, that's not normal. But sure, we weren't none the wiser.
No.
Took iron supplements, but they didn't do.
Yeah. And that's the problem, isn't it? We get so used to just operating on automatic, and that's always been the issue, even with research, because, it's only about 4 or 5% of the total amount of money allocated for medical research has been allocated to women's health. And of that, about 3% of that is serious diseases such as cancer and diabetes and heart disease. And so there's very little information, research available and so you go to the doctor and they'd give you either these big scenarios. I remember a doctor saying to me, let's just get a hysterectomy, get it over and done with. And I think I was about 48. And I'm like, no, I don't need to. And then, so I got a second opinion, and the second doctor, who was wonderful, said, no, there's lots of things, but it's almost like, oh, well, just you're done now. And of course, hysterectomy just brings all the other issues along with it. I mean, for women who have had to have a hysterectomy, and in most cases it is usually a last resort. But I know the challenge they have with it, especially if you're a young age of 48. I mean, we think of young 48 being young. It is young.
It is. But the funny thing is, people, would I go back to 48? No, because I think of those years from, like I said, 38 to 48, and the way I felt, the struggles. No, I'm quite happy and content being me now at this age, if that makes sense.
I totally agree with you. I didn't like my 40s at all. When I look back on it, it was like staying alive. Just in my 40s, just staying alive. The all the issues. I remember being, like you were saying, so tired all the time, having teenagers in the house, the anxiety, the anger, getting angry one night because I'd come home from a really long day at work. I'd been there 10 hours. And I walk in the door and the kids are sitting in the living room and there's stuff everywhere and the dishwasher's full of clean dishes and the sink's full of dirty dishes. And I just absolutely lost it. Like, just literally locked myself in the laundry, screaming and yelling. I mean, I was just at the end. And that's when my husband, I remember him knocking on the door. What do you need? I don't know what I need. Whatever, just do it. Don't ask me to think about what I need. But it was just this constant, and probably you were the same. Teenagers in the house also going through their own hormonal issues. I think it's Mother Nature's greatest joke to put, pubescent teens in with perimenopausal mothers. And my husband used to go in the garage and just, I think I'll just stay here.
Yeah, my husband played guitar, right? And I think they were his outlets, but that brought me to a funny thought. My son, my oldest son, he's 30. And I remember when we lived in Richmond, he would have been probably about maybe 13. And I was having a meltdown in the kitchen. I remember my husband said, come out of there, right? Because I said, if one of you don't leave, I'm going to pick up something and throw it. So he goes in and he says to my husband, I think mom's in that, metamorphosis. No, he did. Metamorphosis, he said. He was trying to menopause, but I'll never forget that. Mom's in metamorphosis. Oh my God.
Really?
I was in Perry. I think mom's in that metamorphosis. Poor kid, right? Like, when I think of that, I laugh, Yeah. She's in, well, that's probably what I was. Yeah.
The thing is, that's actually what's happening. We are in a metamorphosis. We are evolving. Our body's trying to adjust to this. Is like estrogen, comes out. As I say to people all the time, it actually gets better. Like, it gets better. You don't care as much about things that are unimportant, right?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, sitting in the chair, you just save somebody's head off. It's like, if there's somebody's talking rubbish, like, I don't want to hear this. Like,
exactly. Or like, there's so many things in the world that, or so many people in the world that maybe need so much more nurturing or compassion, or, whereas an example would be, I'll give you an example of this one customer. I felt like shaving the head off. My $4.5 million this lost a stock of that, right? And it's kind of like, I listened to it for 10 years and you just have to. And then this one particular day, like I said, I just felt like shaving all his hair off and saying, I just had a lady in my chair, two customers prior, that I had to actually shave her head off because she was diagnosed with cancer. And she sat there and I went through it with her, shaving her head off as she cried. And I could feel the anger inside myself when he was going on about losing, I don't know, a few $100. And those little things really annoyed me. I thought, Sandra, you got it. And now be done. And I would think I was coming to the end of my days in that industry.
Yeah. It's interesting. Your story is so, cognizant, I think, of many women that get to a point and you go, is this it? Like, do I have to listen to this for the rest of my, so many women leave corporate or start new careers or you go back into corporate, it's that wonderful change. I love it. I think it really redefines us as women. And I love in particular what you're doing now, because you actually, when you go into homes, you're just recreating something so wonderful for people to live in that says something to them.
And that's the space. Like, your home is your space where you want to come home and it's almost like a hug. You want, like, when someone gives you a hug, put their arms around you. Well, you want to come into your space and feel like you're getting a hug. You want it to feel like your safe space, your comfortable space, right? Like, so, and I love giving that to people, and like also transitioning people from their homes of 40 years into like independent living. I also do that. So I try to take their belongings and recreate their new environment, as I call it, a mini replica of the home, so that, women in their mid 80s, early 90s, they're feeling, I can't even imagine how they're feeling about that change. And you want them to feel their environment is surrounded, with things they're familiar with too. Like, it's every aspect, I guess, every age of life, right? That you look at, we transition and we change, really, don't we?
Yes. And I was thinking, as you're saying, like a woman in her 80s and 90s has been in her own home for a long time, and then she has to go into, assisted living. I mean, that is, what do they call it? God's waiting room. I mean, that once you go there, that's it. So being able to take replicas of your own space. And I know, because when my dad passed, oh my gosh, cleaning out his house, like I remember he said to us, because we had to put him into care for a little while, and he said, don't get rid of my antique tools, my tools in the garage. They were rusted hammers and some chisels and stuff. They were his. They were his antique, that were his, he'd had them all his life. And getting rid of those was really hard for all. I'm one of five. And when we were going through it, that was really difficult for us, because that was him. That was who he was. He loved to tinker. But it's hard, isn't it? Like, they're going from a house
to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it's sad.
Yeah. So when you're doing, like, do you sit and talk with them for a while? Do you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I would meet the family. Like, yeah, I've met some amazing people along the way. And one of my stories I did write, and I shared in one of, I think it was one of the books, Pursuit 365. The story was how I started my business, and when I met some of these people and transitioning, especially the elder ladies, like in their 80s to 90s, I would always start off with, when I go into the house, hey, why don't I make you a cup of tea? So I'd let me boil the kettle. So it became another cup of tea for me, like when I go in their home. So we'd sit, and they like to have the chat. They like to have the cup of tea. I'm not going to go in there and get right down to brass tacks and say, this is what needs this. No, we're going to have a cup of tea. I'm going to learn about your life. And then I'm going to try and make this transition the smoothest, easiest, comfortable possible way that we can do it. And I want you to feel safe in your space and not just strip you of everything that you've been used to all these years. It's so difficult, and it's so difficult for the family, for the children also, right? That the children, say in 50s, 70s, dealing with this too, therefore probably not a bad idea to start going, like, myself and my husband had just this conversation. I said, like, we need to start going through our stuff, because I even have some blankets from my aunt in Ireland. She was amazing knitter, like, and I'm like, these mean nothing to my children. Like, what am I going to do with this stuff? So donate it and get rid of it. It's very hard to let go sometimes, but I guess you just have to mentally get in that state of mind to say, we need to let it go, because it's going to happen when our kids get their hands on it, or our grandkids. It's going in the dump because it doesn't mean anything to them, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, we went through this when we moved from Australia to Canada a couple of years ago. We had to get very, very, very strict on I said to the kids, I've got all these lovely memories of you, and all the stuff I'd kept. I used to put there, each week I'd put whatever they made into preschool, and I kept all that. And when I said, do you want me to bring it? The kids went, no, it means nothing to a couple of, I've kept their cards that they handwritten and all that stuff. But then they've got, well, where am I going to put it? Like it was
Yeah.
okay for to keep all that if it was mum and dad's house,
Yeah.
but I don't have a, I have a small apartment. Where am I going to put it? And moving here, we were very, very strategic in actually what we were buying. So we'd gotten rid of everything. We gave everything away or we sold stuff. So we were starting all over when we came to Canada. And now I won't have things in my house because they mean something for a minute, like things.
So that's funny that you say that, because that my mom would be the same way, because we moved when we left Ireland. We came to Canada, I think, with 5 big cardboard boxes, and the only things in those cardboard boxes would be some photos, would have been the kids' duvet covers from the bed, and like a few things like that. And everything else was either sold or left behind. And then when we came here, we started all over fresh again. So my mom would be a minimalist, and she definitely wouldn't be like a materialistic. No,
No,
no. So
no.
yeah, we moved her out of her home, about 8 years ago, but she moved to a condo, right? All my siblings had left, and I'm like, why are you in this big house on your own? Get a condo. And it was probably the easiest move, because she had no problem. Oh yeah, no, I'm not bringing this, I'm not bringing that. And we just got all new stuff. And it feels good too. And of course, her photos and the things that mean something, but
Yeah.
we don't need, boxes upon boxes upon boxes of stuff, because what are you going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Store it and then
Mm-hmm.
take up space. And
Mm-hmm.
it takes up space in your mind also,
Exactly.
because you feel, I know I do, if my closets or anything, gets a little unruly, I automatically start to feel heavy. I feel weighed down. And as soon as I clear that out or clean it or rearrange things or change, I just feel fresh, uplifted, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I do when I go into people's homes, right? Even like, yeah, just a small refresh, a small change, anything. It can be from small little thing to a big renovation, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I
but
think,
yeah,
say oftentimes, the more cupboards you've got, the more stuff you've got. The cupboard, you'll just put stuff in. And I mean, even this year, we've only been here 2 and a bit years, and I still pull things out of my closet this year and thought, I didn't even wear that last year. Like, why am I still, even after 2 years? And I agree with you. I like clean spaces. I'm a Virgo, so everything's got a place. Cushions have to be in the right spot before I go to bed, all that.
yeah,
But I think the clutter of often we feel in our lives, or the stress, can sometimes be because there's too much stuff in it.
stuff.
Just stuff. And it means nothing. In the end, it means nothing. I mean, I watched your Instagram stories, and I love how when you go in, you actually add a dimension of light to it. That's the best way I can explain it. You kind of add a dimension of light to things. Like, it's not cluttered. There'll be one or two extra little bits and pieces, but they're not heavy.
Yeah,
I see that a lot in the
yeah.
work that you do.
Yeah, just find a little place for certain things and things that mean a lot to people. Then I find spaces and places, and just by changing something's color, or even like a change of paint on the wall just to lighten the space up, then
Mm,
can actually make that furniture look a
mm,
lot lighter and brighter. Yeah, it just changes the dynamics of
that's
the
wonderful.
space. Yeah, yeah. No, I love what I do. It it fuels me,
Yeah.
and fills my cup, I'll say, and I'm so passionate, and I think that's why I just I love meeting people and I love chatting, so you can't
Yeah.
really go wrong with what I do. Sometimes I spend too much time chatting and having tea, and I'm like, okay, I think we need to get this done, we need to finish this today.
I love it. I love it. I mean, getting to know people. That's how you make this space so personal.
Yeah,
Getting
yeah,
to know them, right? Because
yeah.
and because oftentimes I think of sometimes someone will come in to look at your house, and it's their vision of what they like, not your vision, and you take that person, their personality, and make it.
That's so important. And then tell their story.
Yes.
I like to tell their story.
Yes.
No, I'm not going to go in and go, oh, it needs to da. No, I want to sit and I want to find out all about you. And then I want to take your memorabilia and maybe kind of create little things. And I want to showcase your story and how you feel.
What a wonderful way to wrap this up. That is so
right.
I've got a couple of questions to ask you before we go. If you could have a conversation with your 30-year-old self, what would you tell her?
If I could have a conversation with my 30-year-old self, I would tell her, don't sweat the small stuff. I would tell her, go out there, hold your head up high. I would tell her to maybe be a little bit more confident. And I would just tell her, take more of a free approach to life. And I would probably tell her, you're not broken. You're not broken. Yeah. One day at a time, I guess. That's a hard question. What would I tell my 30-year-old self? But in a nutshell, don't sweat the small stuff.
It's so true, isn't it? The things, I mean, you look back on you when you were 30 and little children and trying to do it all. And the thing, I still remember standing outside the year 1 classroom of my son, and the mothers were talking about reading levels, and it was really important what reading level their child is. And I remember getting, gosh, my child's not at that reading level.
Yeah. So if you could matter, don't sweat the small stuff, right? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. These things don't matter. Everybody excels at different levels.
And you're doing the best job you can. Just show up every day. Wake up.
Yeah, that's it. Just wake up. Put your 2 feet. We have the privilege, as long as we have the privilege, because some people don't get that privilege to wake up every day and put their 2 feet on the ground, right? So
that's brilliant. Thank you, Sandra. I've loved this
Thank
conversation.
you.
I know why the people have a cup of tea with you.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
And you can find in the show notes, I'll have all of Sandra's contact details. Please check out her Instagram because she does some beautiful stories on there. And to give you an idea of just how she works. And if you're in Vancouver, please reach out to Sandra. If you're having trouble, figuring out what works and what doesn't. And if you have an elderly parent, you've got this transition, it's so much nicer if somebody else, like Sandra, will sit down and have a cup of tea with them. They're not going to be mean to you. That's
what I was just going to say. Or even if you just want to call me up and go meet for a coffee and a chat, feel free. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sandra. Love this chat, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Thank you, Sally. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that wonderful episode with the gorgeous Sandra Flora. Don't you just love her accent? And it's inspired you. Have you got something that, you've had on your heart for a long time you'd love to do, but you're scared of being judged or people trying to dissuade you? Do what Sandra does. Just go ahead and build it and then tell them. Thank you for being on this week's episode. And remember, share this with someone you know who may need a little bit of inspiration. Remember to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next week on the Midlife Reimagined Life Beyond Menopause podcast. I'll see you next.